Hi everyone, it's Sarah from the Support Worker Store. Today I have got Alan. Hi Alan, how are you going?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Look, I'll be honest with you, I'm really excited that you said yes to be on this podcast because I have been following and watching your content for some time now. And I know that sounds really creepy and stalky, but you've got really great content on your platforms and I just really enjoy it. So let's dive straight in. What inspired you to open your business, which is Strong Foundation Support?
Yeah, so why I decided to start Strong Foundation Support is simply because a lot of people out there are feeling lost and overwhelmed with the whole NDIS process. And, a lot of people, might not know how to use their NDIS plans or might not know which direction they need to go into to be able to utilize that funding in the best way. And I think, it is a, as we all know, like most plans are more underutilized than actually utilize. So I want to encourage people to have the knowledge, have the skills to be able to use that funding that is obviously disability specific and the lovely word of reasonable and necessary
Yeah.
that will fit their lives the best. Because if the funding is there and they've gone through the hardship and the difficulty of getting on NDIS, like that is such a massive battle in itself.
Yeah.
Let's use that funding. Let's get that funding in place, clear up the confusion, and allow people to, really build some amazing skills with that funding.
Is that what, as somebody in the sector, when it came to your own experience on the NDIS, was this the foundation of building your business?
Yeah, so like I started working in the NDIS when NDIS rolled out here where I am in far north Queensland. So I got thrown into it at the same time as I got my first plans. I had to really navigate my way through it to have an understanding of one, how to help participants, but also how to utilize my own personal plan, because sometimes of ideas I might get in my head of what's funded, what's not funded. Sometimes I've had to use myself as a little bit of a test bed to test a theory to see whether if that is an idea that we can push through the NDIS, and is that something that we can sort of mold and around another person to get that funding. Because a lot of people might think, oh, that's instantly not funded, but a little bit of molding, a little bit of rejigging. You can look at getting other things funded.
So practically so the NDIS is more than 10 years old. So I dare say that you have been a participant for more than 10 years. Have you seen quite a big shift and a change how delivery is going with the NDIS?
Yeah,
Sorry,
so
that's such a big question.
where I where where I am up here in far north Queensland, we didn't get NDIS until 2018. So we're the late bloomers, I guess. And when it came into the sector up here, everybody was running around like headless chooks. Nobody really knew what this looked
Yep.
like. And
Yep.
because up here we're very, like, even though we're in a medium sized city, you drive 30 minutes out of town, that's instantly remote. And
Yeah.
a lot of service providers had no idea and still are struggling to provide services to people that are simply 30 minutes drive. And it's that close to the city. So, having that understanding to implement the NDIS model when it first came out, because obviously what has been test bedded, down in New South Wales, Tasmania, those places, that is, location specific, and that is what the model worked for them. Obviously, up here, we had to do a lot of, the providers had to do a lot of, planning and implementation around what the services were going to provide and how they're going to provide, and whether it's going to be individualized or group services. So it took a lot, and NDIS in this area has grown exponentially. Sometimes you see a new service provider driving past, you're like, oh, who is that? So sometimes you're trying to keep up with who's who around, especially as a support coordinator. You sometimes get lost with the services, because there are just so many unique services out there that have started and grown since
Yep.
2018.
Yep. So with your business, what does a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, so a lot of things. I like making content. Trying to give some videos and tips and tricks back to service providers and participants as well. And that I like making that type of content because I'm trying to give back to people that without having such a wall that people have to overcome to get that information. Because a lot of places out there, they have a massive wall up just to get some basic information. So if I can fill that gap a little bit and, like help people, that's, tip number one. Second one is obviously when I'm working with participants, breaking down the barriers, helping them understand their plans, helping them what a lot of this technical jargon means, because as we all know, what's written on your paper plan, the wording there is completely different to what's in the portal. And, there's so many different acronyms, and, a lot of people are just so overwhelmed. So, I spend a fair bit of time just, reassuring and allowing people to express their frustrations a little bit. And then once we overcome that, then we start working towards what their goals are. And yeah, basically a lot of emails, phone calls, and trying to say hello to people to make these connections.
So I take it you enjoy working with people that are receiving the NDIS and being able to deliver information to them in a way that's quite accessible. I must admit, watching your content, that's so much easier and better than what I could ever deliver. And the way that you deliver it is fantastic. I dare say you'd get that feedback a lot.
No, I appreciate that. I'm glad that people are feeling that, and that's certainly the goal, is to break down and make it easy so people can dive.
Well, when they created the NDIS and everything that comes after the NDIS when it comes to publication is really quite difficult to understand. And then once you understand it, put it into practice, because what is written and what is practiced is two different things. So trying to get that information out that is accessible and easy for people, I think that's probably one of the NDIS's biggest lags, the fact that they don't give enough information out to NDIS participants, their families, the external stakeholders of somebody's life, that there's not enough easy information to digest for them to understand. And even as a service provider.
You're exactly right. And that's been the biggest bugbear since the implementation of NDIS. The planners and the LACs, they're working with so many participants, but, the implementation side of things is a little bit left on the wayside. Everybody that I speak to, they receive their plan and they go, what do I do with this thing? There's no real education. There's no guidance from the NDIS. Obviously, they have support coordinators in place to implement that. But the big but with that is that there's not enough time. There's not enough time. Support coordinators are limited with the amount of time that they have, on average, 25, 30 hours a year. By the time you implement services, there is no time for coaching, understanding, putting that implementation, sitting down with a participant. There's no time. So everybody is struggling with understanding.
Even like the content that they do deliver, I find it's an easy read document. That's fine. Great. It's not in video form. And it's not explained in the way that you explain it. So if out of anything, if you could do anything, if the NDIS could just hire you to deliver information in video form, I think we'd all sleep easier.
Let's start a petition. Let's get that happening.
I don't know. We have to bypass all the allied health this week to get to them.
Yes.
What is the most challenging thing about starting a business? And because your business is quite different to a lot of businesses in the NDIS, what is the most challenging part for you?
For me, like trying to explain what I'm doing, because I'm doing something that is probably considered not the normal. Everybody might be facing a little bit of challenges of understanding exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Some people might have the assumption that what I'm doing is support coordination, but without doing support coordination line items, which is completely different. Like support coordinators have their role, and everything that I do is complementing support coordinators.
Yeah.
And that is, one challenge that I'm, trying to share, is that no, like support coordinators have their place. Disability support workers have their place. Everybody has their place. But, I'm coming in to assist with the understanding, and that empowers everybody to reach out and use their funding even more effectively.
Yeah. Is there ever a time that you read a plan and go, whoa, that's different? A bit unusual.
All the time. Like you think you understand plans, and then you see something, you're like, what is that? And you got to go back to the drawing board.
What is the wildest thing you've seen?
Gee, is like the thing that sort of like I struggle a lot with is stated supports. A lot of people get locked down with stated supports.
Yeah.
And, like people don't have the ability to be able to, use that choice and control. So I'm just sort of struck. Like I've seen some wild things in plans. I'm just trying to remember an example off the top of my head. So
Sorry.
especially the specific wordings, but definitely there has been some curveballs that are got thrown out that I've had to go back to the NDIS or had to do some research to be able to have a further understanding of what
Yeah.
that actually is.
Yeah, I gave you a wild card there because I have seen some, especially with all the changes coming in. I saw a plan the other week and I was like, how many years? What? That's different. That is unusual. Yeah. Um, what kind of people do you provide support to? Is it mostly people with NDIS packages, or are you doing any mentoring for support coordinators and LACs?
That's something that I'm going to be doing in the future. Not at the moment because I need to develop a bit of a program around how to support coordinators, and that is something that I have to put a little bit more time and effort into actually build a program. But at the moment, just working with NDIS participants. Yeah.
And how do you come about finding NDIS participants to support? Because it's quite niche and it's not something that I dare say a lot of people don't Google to find.
Yeah, so like a lot of my referrals so far have been generated through social media, whether it's been posting on Facebook groups or using TikTok. A few people have reached out via those methods. So it's slowly growing. It's a work in progress, and we're getting there. And I'm getting my website properly done. I've sort
It
of
looks
have
good.
a bit of
I
a
must admit, I did jump onto it. I do like your website.
that's good. I sort of was a bit of a hodgepodge thing that I cobbled together on Squarespace.
We won't play this game. Don't check out mine.
So I'm just started getting things implemented. So these things take time. As I've started recently, it's a fairly recent venture. So trial and error and using the knowledge and skills that I have from my time as a support coordinator. And obviously, with the way everything's going, like still doing the coaching, mentoring, but then also getting back into the support coordination and psychosocial recovery coaching.
All right. So you've got a bit going on.
A little bit, yes.
With your business and the mentoring, can you give me like a step by step of when you intake a new NDIS participant and their families, how does the process work? Like, is it one of those things that they just drop a line in your DMs and say, "Hey, I need some help"? Do you have to do a full intake? Do you have to ask? Is it a questionnaire? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, so like I've got a very simple process because I'm trying to, my whole premise of everything that I'm doing is to make this process as easy as possible. People can message me. They can, jump on the website. There is, a contact form. There is I've got a calendar, the booking platform as well that people can jump on there and that people can find their own appointments. Offer free meet and greet, so a 15-minute call, exactly like this, a video call, or even like I know some people do not like or don't have the ability to be able to use Zoom or a webcam. I'm more than happy to do a phone call.
Yep.
So yeah, so basically, just a conversation, just like you and me are having right now. In that call, it's not really anything. We don't get into anything in depth because it takes a little bit of time to understand where a person's plan is. But it's just a round of having a chat. How can I help? And where would you like to be in 6 months or 12 months' time?
Yep. Beautiful. So, is it busy? Like, or is it?
Is it busy? Oh, slowly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, how long have you
it's a
been
new venture.
operational for?
It's not long, only about a month and a half. Yeah, so it's very very new venture that this is happening. So slowly but surely.
Not seen an Allan like you before in the sense of this business. You're the first
No,
I've seen.
that's right. And I think like a lot of I'm coming in to do something a little bit different that is not in the normal, and it does take a little bit of time to be able to share what is actually happening and how that
Yeah.
is going to fit in the NDI space. And I guess everybody is a little bit conditioned of the step process, so just throwing something different in there to help people.
Sorry, I'm so fangirling, but I do. I like the idea of, sitting down, explaining plans, going through it, how to best utilize it. But also, I believe this sector at times, when it comes to support coordination, they're not trained. Or like there have been multiple times that I've had support coordinators reach out about line items, and I'll be like, "But ain't that your job?" Yeah. So I get that like this type of business is needed in this sector, and especially with families because it can be quite overwhelming. And it's so easy to, when you're meeting with a planner, to make a mistake with our language that we use. What is one of the most common mistakes you see in NDIS plans?
Like when the people get their plans back, they don't have the proper goals that they originally wanted, or they have a goal that is way too broad. Like in NDIS, like I encourage everybody to have specific goals. Another one is obviously the about me section. That seems to come back wrong all the time. Sometimes there are, little mistakes with how plans are managed. Sometimes people want plan managed, they end up getting NDIA managed. So, going through those processes of making those smaller administrative changes. I can understand, like when people get a plan, it's wrong, and like it does cause a lot of stress and anxiety. So, being able to say, hey, let's just relax and we can work through it. There's a process, and the process does take time, and having that a conversation with people that this can be fixed, but there is a process. Oh yes, the first plan review, that's always a very daunting one. Yeah. It's a scary thing because like it almost feels like you have to reprove yourself again. And a lot of people struggle, like have that worry because they've done it already with their onboarding, getting their first plan. They had to fight and fight. There's just reports after reports, and some people get setbacks, and then all of a sudden they got to face a review. It's like, oh no, what do we do here? So the big thing that I encourage people to do is have all their reports aligned with the same, uh, information around the supports that they require. They might get a report from their occupational therapist. Will say the occupation will say the person needs 15 hours in home support. Then they get a report from a counselor or a psychologist or something like that, and then the psychologist over here is saying, "Oh no, due to their mental health concerns, they only need 5 hours support." So there is that varying of difference that NDIS, and I have seen them pick up, like, hey, there is no consistency with what actual funding you need. So one thing I say to provide to participants is that having your reports aligned does streamline that review process because it's a consistent, it's consistent basically, and the NDIS can see, okay, well, across 5 professionals, this person is consistently needing these X amount of support. Okay, we're good to go. It's they're remarkable. The simple thing is they're remarkable. To go through that, obviously, like the day-to-day struggles of supporting somebody with a disability. And I was talking to a guy the other day, and like he's in a situation where he wants to be independent. He wants to be able to manage his day-to-day life, and of course get services put in place. But on the side, like very concerned about his informal supports. How's that going to look like? The informal supports, they're informal supports, but they are individual. They have their own lives. They need to be able to go and do what they need to do, like jobs or raising children. These things matter, and including that in your review of really expressing to the NDIS, like, hey, like we're struggling here. This is a major factor. My partner, yes, they're my partner, but it's not their 100% obligation to not live their lives. They need to be able to do what they need to do. They're not obligated to be my support worker 24/7. So yeah, that's one of my other little side services that I do is like, it's like sort of think of the Ghostbusters call, who are you going to call? Ghostbusters. It's like, yeah, that's exactly right. And that's one of the sort of services that I do is that, like I have, ad hoc services, like people receive a letter that they're struggling with or they don't understand, or they don't know what to do. So, having that ability where people can just give you a call, I think will help. And of course, people, if you're linked with a support coordinator, that's their role as well. Have a chat to your support coordinators, have a chat to your local area coordinators. There are so many people out there that a participant can reach out to assist with understanding these complex letters, because at the NDIS just loves oh, here you go, here's a letter, have fun with that. That's another hard one. Yeah. Oh, like when you've been through a few reviews, they generally have a set process and set sort of criteria that they go through. So you generally know where they're coming from. And one thing that I do encourage people to do is ask especially with the local area coordinators, because you do have that little bit more of a personal approach with them, is to reach out and say, hey, like this upcoming plan review, what are you expecting? What do you want from me, so then I can come to this meeting absolutely 100% prepared. there's no point in going to a review meeting if you're not prepared. And sometimes you do get those curveballs, but that's okay. You can work through them. But going into those review meetings and asking those questions, okay, what do you need from me to be able to make this plan review successful? Yes, yeah, I've done that many times. Yes, yeah. Trying to sort of this one sort of bugs me a little bit. Like you're working with planners that don't quite understand the person's disability. So like I understand, LACs, they're broad range of disabilities, such a broad range of people, such a broad range of cultural backgrounds. There's so many differences that, LACs need to be across, and trying to explain to them in a way that they can understand that this is reasonable and necessary, and trying to break down that barrier that because a person may present in a way might not actually be their real situation. Trying to work through planners to actually show them and demonstrate that this is what the person needs. Just because they fit in a box, like cerebral palsy, well, everybody loves throwing disabilities in boxes. Just because that person lives in that box doesn't mean that funding is appropriate for that individual. They might need funding from different boxes. So trying to articulate that. Yeah, I think it just stems back to understanding, having an understanding of the language, having understanding of the process, understanding of the roles of NDIS and how different roles play out. Because in NDIS, a lot of people, we have very similar job titles. And it does, like a lot of people do get very confused very quickly about what that actually is and how those roles support that person. I guess, like having the ability to be able to reach out to reliable supports as well. Once you find everybody talks about a good support coordinator, a good plan manager, once you find that support, and then there's plenty out there, like I'm not knocking support coordinators, not knocking plan managers. There are so many good ones out there that will work their butts off to provide the best services that they can. That helps. Like if you could have that person that you click with, you're instantly on a winner right there. You do, and that's the big things is that a lot of people need to say, okay, this is not working for me. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on. Exactly right. And people should not feel there is no repercussions. There's no negative effects. There is nothing that's going to come back on you if you decide to leave a service. 100%. Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's something that I encourage everybody. If you don't like it, change it. 100%. Like there's so many different providers out there that are target, like have their own niche and their own expertise that will align with what you need. Exactly right. I 100% agree with you. Yeah, definitely. So, I've got a free resource section on my website that people can jump on and just simply put in your email. It's 100% free, no charges at all. A couple of things that I have put together already, like this is just the cover page, but essentially is that this is a list of, it's about a 3 or 4 page document that people can use, and it inspires questions, especially around when you're asking about NDIS providers and how to make an informed decision. Like that is a big thing of trying to find providers that are going to be the best and suited for what exactly you need when you're looking for a service, because there are so many different service providers out there. You may get a little bit overwhelmed and a little bit lost about exactly what to ask. So yeah, that's a free resource about what questions you can ask. And I also got a second one here that is around just inspiring ideas of what you can utilize within your core support. So some people might not think of that they can access certain things that are relevant to their disabilities. Just a couple of little simple documents there that are designed to inspire and create a bit of conversation. Exactly right. Like that's the questions that people should be asking, is not the niceties and like you're a lovely person and you do everything on the weekend. Well done. But what real service do you put in place? How does your service actually help me achieve my goals? That's the kicker. That's what your participants are paying for, is that support to achieve their goals, not the not the niceties. Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right. You're looking for a provider that will come in and assist you with your day-to-day life. If you need support on a Tuesday, well, then you should receive support on a Tuesday. If the provider can't provide that support on a Tuesday, well, I'll find somebody else that can. 100%, 100%, 100%. And like if a provider can't provide that service on a, they're restricting a person to that standpoint, then time to change. But like I got to defend it. Sometimes I got to, on the flip side, got to defend a provider as well, because sometimes life does happen. Sometimes staff can't make it. But there are those sort of things that people, and like I will defend providers a little bit here as well. Participants need to be a little bit reasonable as well when coming back to providers. So there is a balance. Like providers need to be able to fit in with a person's life, but also the person's life needs to be able to fit in with a provider as well. So there is that whole balance of service provision. Well, everything except Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, and pretty much everywhere else. So I'm building a presence on all the social medias. Same business name across all of it. Strong foundation support. LinkedIn. Actually, last night I created a business profile on LinkedIn. That way, it'll just be a little bit easier for people to find that where people prefer to use LinkedIn, because I'm hearing a lot of people like LinkedIn, so I'm dabbling a little bit. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, so like in that sort of first meet and greet phone call, it's just around about having that initial connection. Like, am I the right fit for you? Do you get a good vibe from me, and do I get a good vibe from them? Like obviously, sometimes you're going to meet people that you just simply just go, no, 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 no. Yeah, that's exactly right. If they're doing something that is completely out of my wheelhouse, or it is very complex, that it's going to, I feel that I'm not going to be the best fit, or if I'm going to be, I don't want to provide service just for the sake of providing service. Simple as that. Like a lot of providers will just, they're like Finding Nemo, like that analogy with the seagull. It's like mine, 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 mine. I see that all the time, and that's definitely not me. If I feel that I'm not the best fit, like certainly refer on, or point the person in the right direction, because people need to find the best fit that's going to help them achieve the goals. Exactly right. Yeah. So utilizing platforms like Zoom or Google Meets, or even phone calls. So originally I wasn't going to do phone calls, but I decided to include phone calls, simply because sometimes internet, laptops, computers are a barrier, and a lot of people don't have access to technology. So that's why having multiple options of communication is the way to open up the door to be able to help people. And if they live locally to where I am, then more than happy to do face to face as well. 100%. Go for it. Future plans, continue to be able to provide the service that I'm doing, continuing to, I guess, promote and show people that what is actually possible. And obviously, doing something that's not considered normal, uh, breaking down that barrier that people do have the ability to be able to understand their plans. And I think, like everybody's been bottlenecked into the fact that they are restricted of what information that they can get. So continuing to promote the business, continuing to create content, and, continuing to develop my skills, because, eventually down the track, I want to be able to still coach and mentor people, but, in roughly about 3 years' time, have the ability to provide counseling as well. So that is, further down the track, but continuing to evolve, continuing to grow, and continuing to try to open up the ability for people to understand. I think that's the main goal. I am, yeah. I went back to university last year. Yeah, sometimes I don't think that. Yeah, that's exactly right. And utilizing those skills not only on a theory side, but also a practical side as well. Having the understanding of what you're learning in the books, but then obviously, I'm always been a believer is that yes, you study, you do have that foundational knowledge within your studies. Cert 3, Cert 4 disability, any of those sort of certifications. Yes, you do understand that understanding, but when you're working with people with disabilities, having that practical knowledge as well is massive. Yes, yeah, no, with you 100% on that. Yeah, same. That's exactly right. No, I think like we've covered it all. I think like it's I just want to say thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come on here and have a conversation with you. Yeah, that like we could talk about like that for hours on end, but that is something that grinds my gears, I guess. Not get on my soapbox again, but a lot of misinformation, a lot of providers out there that are acting in a way that is completely against the code of conduct as well. And it sort of makes me question, saying, well, if they're acting like that on social media, then how are they conducting themselves in a professional manner? And I know that's probably, but that's just my personal opinion that, the way that you conduct yourself on social media, conduct yourself in public, it reflects how you conduct yourself as a business as well. So I just, Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. That's exactly right. Thank you so much. And like, like any sort of topics that anybody, like yourself or anybody that wants me to cover, more than happy to make the videos and like any sort of questions that people might raise, more than happy to do a bit of a delve into it and see if I can break that barrier down. Especially I see like comments on Facebook on some of these NDIS provider networks, and simple things like can a provider charge me a cancellation fee? Well, yeah, these are questions that people are wanting answers to. So yeah, I'm just trying to break it down. Yeah, that's exactly right, and that's something that I'll be doing is doing live TikToks about that. We'll go through it, work our way through it. I want that information to be accessible as best as possible without any sort of paywalls or registrations or anything like that. Like we want to be able to give that information out as freely as possible. Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah. No, no, the whole social media thing is a different world. So no worries. Thank you so much.